Batman Caped Crusader is the latest animated take on The Dark Knight, and it tells the story of after a family tragedy, affluent philanthropist Bruce Wayne transforms into the Batman, where his crusade for justice spawns unforeseen ramifications. And this was released in 2024. And when I heard this show was coming out, I was initially looking forward to it. It was being marketed as like a more dark, more mature take on Batman. And just like how, the Batman, the animated series, um, borrowed a lot from the Tim Burton movies at the time, this series was seemingly going to borrow a lot from the Matt Reeves Batman, which came out in 2022. And I really liked and enjoyed that movie, and I thought they did a lot of cool things in that one. Um, and they're both this show and the animated series from the 90s are both ran by Bruce Timm. He has heavy involvement in both shows, so there might be a lot of similarity or a lot of comparisons to that show in this review. Um, but yeah, I was pretty excited for this show because it was new Batman in the animated form, and unfortunately, I don't think it really lived up to my expectations. I was like, I was excited to like support it because it's DC animation, and I'm always looking forward to that. But one of the like one difference between this and the Batman the animated series is the animated series from the 90s is a lot more episodic. This one, it does have like some episodic elements with like there's usually a villain for each episode. But there is like there are like several storylines that do weave and connect through each episode. This is about a 10 episode run for this season one. The animation itself is very crisp and it is pretty visually appealing, but some of the creative choices feel a little bit unnecessary or and sometimes distracting. Um, Aesthetically, the show I think it looks really really nice. Like the city of Gotham, it has got like this 1940s aesthetic, but a technology of today. So it kind of exists out of time, which I always really do enjoy that they do that with some of the series, and but some of the changes to like existing characters, I don't think always add something meaningful or add to the characters, and I think sometimes they take away from the characters instead. And I'll circle back to that, but in the animated series, it's not like that animated series didn't make plenty of changes to the Batman canon as well. I mean, just established characters especially. An example is Mr. Freeze, but for Mr. Freeze, it was a little bit different because, uh, you know, he was given more of a tragic backstory that added depth, and I think it added to the character rather than taking away from him. And it also introduced new characters, which is something I think was really good at the time. They introduced characters like Harley Quinn, the Creeper, the Judge, and these characters like became like iconic. Mainly Harley Quinn, but I think instead of making like these drastic like alterations to familiar characters, I think the Capes Crusader show uh, probably would have been better off introducing new ones. Um, that said, there were a lot of aspects I did enjoy. I think the way they handled the Clayface storyline was very creative, and it was really cool to see that. And I think my favorite episode was probably episode 8, Nocturne, which had a actual like genuinely eerie atmosphere with its carnival setting and the missing children plot, and it reminded me of the kind of storytelling we might have seen in Batman the Animated Series, but with that more edgy, more dark twist. So I think that is an episode where they actually did do pretty well. Um, but when I said like some of the changes that I think like take away from characters, I think one example is probably Harvey Dent. Uh, for example, like here he's like at before he becomes spoilers, Two Face. He's already kind of portrayed as like an unlikable, sleazy kind of guy, rather than someone who's like suffering from a split personality that can like come up at odd times. He already just kind of seems like someone who's like morally kind of flexible and is, not the nicest guy. Um, but he still ends up with the same fate as always. So it makes the change feel not as drastic, and it makes it feel more superficial. Like it was, and it makes like like the change for Harvey Dent's character to be, kind of more mean before he becomes Two-Face. It seems like they just, kind of changed it just for the sake of being different rather than to like enhance the story. So, and yeah, I think like some of their takes on like some of the newer characters or some of their takes on the characters that have already existed, it just feels kind of off. And I, but I do like that they tried swinging for the fences, and they did try to do something new with a lot of the characters. So I can appreciate that because even back then they were doing a lot of changes with the characters. It's just back then these changes just seemed to work, and especially uh, there's like bias. Like I'm definitely biased because I love that show, and those are the characters that like I grew up with. So like when there are changes, I'm probably not going to be as receptive to those changes as people who are probably going to grow up with this show or however it works. But yeah. Um, Overall, I think the show uh like proves that like, something sometimes making something darker or more edgy doesn't like necessarily mean it's going to equate to better storytelling. I think, this show kind of maybe tried to fix what wasn't broken. And in doing so, I think they maybe weren't able to capture the same magic as the animated series from the 90s. Because, I feel like if the animated series from the 90s was coming out today, I would keep on watching it. I mean, I loved it, but you know, we never will really know how that would go. But this is the latest rendition, and for me, I think it was kind of hard to stay engaged. Uh, and for me, it's probably just going to be a C minus for this show. It was a little bit disappointing, but I don't think it's without its potential. I wanted to support the show, and I'm still interested in seeing what they might do if they get a season two. I'm not sure if it's announced yet, but if a season two is coming out, I am hopeful that they're going to do some cool stuff and go into interesting directions because, you know, some of the things in season one they didn't really make sense to me, but I think if we just trust the process, I'm sure that they'll come up with something clutch, and I do hope that they get a season two. So it's disappointing, but definitely not without its potential. But certainly do let me know what you guys think of the show Batman Caped Crusader, or if you have a favorite Batman series, do let me know and I will be reading. um, but yeah, if you enjoyed, please subscribe and please like the video.